Hi, welcome to our lecture on art history. Today is the first session, and it is about making history, about how history is about stories, about art history is about stories, about which stories get told, which stories don't get told, and who tells what kind of stories for whom. It is also a mechanics class, because today is about the mechanics of art and the mechanics of history. It's kind of basic training class. So please listen up. A. First part is about reception. It is about how art works, how art creates impressions, how art evokes reactions from people. Part 2 is about the structures that create history, the narrative that we call history. So, part 1. Part 1 is about what in German we call aesthetics of reception, and which in English, much more intelligible, much more understandable, is called the reader response criticism. It is an entire branch of philosophy, aesthetics, and of art theory. And this branch of art theory is about the interesting question of why does art work? Why does art work? And why doesn't it sometimes? In the 19th century, people were mostly convinced that art worked because the object was special and it had been imbued with special powers by the special person that made it, which was normally a genius, which normally meant this was a white male person who was, by his contemporaries, supposed to be above average, somebody with a specially refined perception who, thanks to that perception and thanks to specially honed senses and talent, knew more about the world than the rest of his fellow men and women anyway. So the idea was you have an above average person who has an above average perception and hopefully good education, which empowers him to create objects which possess an innate aura and special quality which speaks to others when they see them. By now, this idea is considered 19th century. It is also considered slightly sexist, racist, and outdated, and proto-structuralist. With the end of the 20th century, and now, we have a different model for explaining art, which is mostly about context. It is first about individual context. It is, the question is, what is the artist trying to tell me, which you still hear quite often. This question, please bin it. Forget about it. It goes into the trash. What is the artist trying to tell? I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit. This artist is completely uninteresting. What's interesting is you. I want to know what you, looking at a piece of art and getting moved, what you tell me. Why is this piece important for you? Or why is it not? Yeah. And normally, we assume that a work of art is an object that visually, or in text, or in sound, combines complex layers of meaning, which remain completely meaningless unless you are there to watch, or to read, or to listen. Because you can put marble statues on the meadow with the cows, and they won't matter much to the cows. No matter how beautiful that piece is, how many people have been moved by it in the last 5 centuries, or how important and how genius-like the creator was. So it's not innate. It's not something that is structurally part of the object. The object functions within layers of cultural meaning by, heaping them, combining them, making complex messes of layers of meaning. And even if you look at such a piece, it doesn't necessarily mean that it will work. It doesn't necessarily mean, if you go by the letter of the definition, that art is taking place. Because the moment art happens is when this probably precious, probably very, very skillfully made object that links into layers of cultural meaning sparks an emotional or intellectual or whatever kind of emotion in you. If there is no reaction, if it leaves you cold, then there is no art happening. Very simple. That also means that different works of art may be important to you during your lifetime. There may be some that never interest you at all because they never link with your inner processes and they never fascinate you. Okay. Maybe they're also just bad art, Maybe they don't do it for anyone. There may be some that I'm sure you're old enough, I'm sure you have enough pieces in your memory that your books or favorite movies, favorite photographs, whatever, you will have a lot of those that fascinated you at one point when you were younger and that you don't find interesting anymore. So you're through with them. You've had a kind of discussion without words with them, and you may have found out something, even if you cannot put it into words. But there are, of course, other ways of communicating. And that's it, you're done. And there may be favorite books, favorite movies, favorite works of art that keep revisiting you, that will keep you company throughout your life. And you will keep coming back to them and keep finding new significances. Well, can you even say that? No. You will find that they keep changing what they signify for you during your life. And that is art at its best. That is when it works. And I worked as a tour guide for a long time in the Preußischer Kulturbesitz, that is the state museums of Berlin, Museum Island, and so on. And I probably took hundreds, if not thousands, of people through these museums in guided tours. And I can only tell you, that if you walk through a museum for 90 minutes with 15 people, and you get this bang moment for each of them just once, then that was a very good tour. If every one of these 15 people just experiences the feeling of fascination, of emotional response to a work of art just once in these 90 minutes, that's fine. And it will probably a different piece for every one of them. Which takes us to another very important argument. Because very often, especially from people who do not have much education in art and not much appreciation for it, sometimes it's not so good scientists. I've never heard anything like that from a really good scientist. So sometimes people say, art that is also wishy-washy. Art is completely arbitrary. It's like an empty container. Everybody just throws his or her or their own shit at it and that's it. It's just a stupid game. It's basically a mind game. It doesn't even really exist. It's some kind of esoteric stuff that you just make up. And, of course, that is not true at all. Which is why we have a whole branch of the humanities looking at art. It is serious scholarship to look at art properly. You really have to train it. And we'll do some of that here, and I'm looking forward to it, and I hope you will enjoy it. So why is art not arbitrary? Of course, art works very differently from, for example, the sciences. A formula is a sentence, in a very precise sentence, in a language that was developed to exactly do this, to extremely precisely describe relationships or shapes or numerical things. Mostly it's shapes, actually. A lot of mathematics is about describing shapes. If my mathematical teachers had explained it to me that way, I would have gotten it. Of course, I was shitty at math. But if they had told me, look, this is a language about shapes, wow, that would have really helped. So I'm telling you now, probably too late. Anyway, so a formula is designed to be precise. And art is kind of less precise in its effects, but it definitely has to be extremely precise in its execution. It has to be extremely well made and extremely skillfully made in order to work. And there goes a lot of precision into this, and there is nothing arbitrary about it. That's point one. Point two. I have never seen an artwork that resulted in completely opposite emotional responses in the viewers. Not once. Never ever. It may seem like that at the first glance. For example, in the old National Gallery in Berlin on Museums Island, there is a very beautiful painting by the French painter Camille Corot from the mid-19th century. I think it's from the 1850s or 1870s. It is called The Wave. It is kind of dark, very powerful, with a huge wave rolling out of the canvas onto you. It's very dark colors, thunderstorm going on, and so on and so on and so on. I've had people standing in front of that canvas and discussing it. One telling me, oh, I hate it. It is so oppressive and depressing. I really don't like it. And I had someone else telling me, what is this person talking about? It's wonderful. I love it. That energy, that power, it is so liberating. And the other said, no, it is oppressive. No, it is liberating. Okay, so apparently, same piece of art, opposite reactions. That is true, but being precise here, being precise in an art historical way, you need to separate the reaction from the impression these people receive, from the immediate response. Because then when you ask them, normally they say something like, this is oppressive, it is dark, there is all this, there is a thunderstorm coming down. I mean, my God, I want to be inside. I feel cold when I look at these dark blue and gray colors, and that wave is, coming straight at me. It will roll over me and drown me. I find this oppressive. And the other says, yeah, but look at all that energy, at the electricity in the air. Yes, I know it's dark, but the sky is going to break open, and look at the energy of that wave. It's going to carry you away. There's so much power in it. I find it liberating. And when you look at these different or very similar descriptions, you will see that people responded quite similarly to the piece itself, but their reaction to their response was different. The same kind of energy or the same kind of quality was, for one person felt oppressive and for the other liberating. But what they had perceived was actually kind of similar. So what's the point? What am I telling you? I am telling you that yes, you can have different reactions to a piece of art. And yes, they may not be precisely the same because persons are not precisely the same. However, a piece of art rarely is arbitrary. A piece of art normally opens a field of significance. It opens a field where you can find different positions, different reactions in the spectators and the beholders and the people who look at the piece. Which takes us to the next question, which is, if the effects of art, if the power of art has so much to do with individual response and with your personal response at a specific moment in time, if it is not even guaranteed that the same piece of art will always work for you, how then can it be that what used to be considered great works of art had a significance for people over time, over centuries, over, why is it possible that specific works of art became significant for an entire time period in a certain culture? And the answer is here, of course. Yeah, that is like history. The connection between the individual and the collective. History is normally, very often, made up of events that impact the lives of many individuals. For example, if your best friend gets killed by a meteorite, well, that's pretty spectacular and pretty shitty, but it doesn't make history. But if millions of people's lives are changed by a war or by an epidemic or whatever, that means that a culture, an entire culture can be changed because so many people are affected by it, and it changes their lives, and it changes the way they see the world, and it may even change the way they see the world in similar ways. There is a before and after, and that is what is often considered an important part of history. And the same, of course, goes for art history, which is kind of a mirror for history. So if a large number of people keep responding to a specific artwork, or if an artwork makes a really big splash in its time, because people see in it, recognize in it, the processes and the complexities and the paradox of that time, if they see them mirrored in this piece, if they can relate to it, then it becomes important for a certain period, and yeah, that is how a piece theoretically becomes part of art history. Of course, this explanation is much too short, much too simple, and much too democratic. That's not how art history works. Which takes us to part 2 of the lecture, the mechanics of history and art history.